and I'm going to start on chapter 6. The other presentations, the Masters and the Brotherhood. So I'm reading the Masters and the Path by Charles W. Leadbeater. Okay, all this while the adepts, beside using his pupil as apprentices, has been preparing him for presentation of the Great White Brotherhood for initiation. The whole object of the existence of the Brotherhood is to promote the work of evolution. And that's why I keep saying everything is about evolution, evolving. You're going to go on evolving over more and more and more and more. And that is what it is in 80. And God created everything. And it's all about evolving, going from a low plane of existence back up into a higher plane. And everybody chooses to come down from here into these lower existence and find their way back up here. And that's truly evolution, not devolution. Not what's his name that said we just evolved from monkeys. It's not true. We've been on this planet for millions and millions of years, and they have evolved and tried all kinds of different things. And it's going to get proven in the future. The whole object of existence of that brotherhood is to promote the work of evolution. And the master knows that when the pupil is ready for the stupendous honor of being received as a member of it, he will be of very much more use in the world than before. And this is why we got to go through challenges and difficulty to see how we're going to use our minds, what we're going to do. Yes, Darwin. That's it, Rose. Thanks. So we always get tested by being put through things to see if we're going to hang on or we're going to let go and allow change. It's like when you divorce or anything. There's something there in the future you're going to discover and find. If somebody dies in your life, somewhere you're going to get past it and you're going to find something really beautiful and good. But you have to go through these stages of evolution. So he will be very much more useful in the world than before. Therefore, it is wished to raise his pupil to the level as soon as possible. That's why you call on these masters and teachers. You ask them to teach you, guide you, and help you. And when you go put through things, know they're there and they are helping you, but they want to see what you're going to do with whatever you're going through. Therefore, it is his wish to raise his pupil to the level as soon as possible. In the Oriental books on this subject written thousands of years ago are to be found many accounts of this preparatory period of instructions. And in China, they know these things. They know of all these things. And they have it recorded. Other cultures have lots of things recorded. Very cool, Sonia. Glad you're starting to look at everything that way. So the accounts of preparatory period of instruction, and when reference has been made to it in the early theosophical literature, it has been called the probationary path, the term referring not to being, but put upon probation by any individual. We all do. I don't care how much knowledge you have. You get put through things over and over and over. It's like you make the dough, you think you're going to turn it into bread, and then all of a sudden you're thinking of turning it into maybe cinnamon buns or into pie or into something else. It's like you keep getting molded and refined in something more and more and more. In the Oriental books on this subject written thousands of years ago are found many accounts of this preparatory period of instruction, and when references have been made to it in the early theosophical literature, it has been called the probationary path, the term referring not to being put upon probation by any individual adept, but to the course of general training preparatory to initiation. I myself use the term in invisible helpers. And that's what all these beings are, angels and all. They're invisible. They don't care if you know their name or not. Adept, but to the course of general training preparatory to initiation. I myself use the term in invisible helpers, but have lately avoided it on the account of confusion caused by the employment of the same word in two distinct senses. The method really adopted is readily comprehensive and in fact much like that of some of our older universities. If a student wishes to take a degree in one of those, he must first pass the entrance exam of the university and then be admitted to one of the colleges. The head of the college is technically responsible for his progress and may be regarded as a tutor in chief. The man will have to work to a large extent by himself, but the head of his college is expected to see that he is properly prepared before he is presented to take his degree. The head does not give the degree, it is conferred by the abstraction called the university, usually at the hands of its vice chancellor. It is the university, not the head of the college, not the head of the college that arranges the examination and confers the various degrees. The work of the head of the college is to see that the candidate is duly prepared and generally to be some extent responsible for him. In the process of such preparation, he may, as a private gentleman, enter into whatever social or other relations with his pupil he may think proper, but all that is not the business of the university. Just in the same way, the Great White Brotherhood has nothing to do with the revelations between the master and his pupil. That is the matter solely for the private consideration of the master himself. The initiation is given by an appointed member of the Brotherhood in the name of the one initiator and is the only way in which the initiation can be obtained. Whenever an adept considers that one of his pupils is fit for the first initiation, he gives notice of that fact and presents him for it. The Brotherhood asks only whether the man is ready for initiation, not what is the relationship between him and any adept. It is not their affairs whether he is at the stage of probation, acceptance, or sonship. At the same time, it is true that the candidate for initiation must be proposed and seconded by two of the higher members of the Brotherhood, that is to say, the two who have reached the level of adeptship. It is certain that no master would propose a man for the tests of initiation unless he had, with regard to him, the certainty of his fitness, which would only come from very close identification with his consciousness. The probationary path is thus a stage leading to the path proper, which begins with the first initiation. In the Oriental books, both these paths are described quite impersonally, as though no private master existed. The questions are first raised. How is a man living in the ordinary world brought to the probationary path? And how does he come to know that such a thing exists? Some of us, for example, may have been monks or nuns in the Middle Ages. We may have come into contact in that life with an abbot or an abbessess who had deep experience in the inner world. A person like Saint Teresa, we may, looking up to the leader, have earnest wished that such experience should come to us, and our wish for that may have been quite unselfish. It may be that we did not think of the importance that would come to us or of the satisfaction of achievement, but simply the joy of helping others, as we saw the abbot able to help others through his deeper discernment. Such a feeling in life would certainly bring us into the next incarnation, into the touch with teachings on the subject. It happens that in lands which have the European culture, almost the only way in which we can get the inner teachings put clearly before us is by coming into the Theosophical Society or by reading theosophic works. There have been mystical and spiritualistic works which have given some information which have gone a long way, but there are none, so far as I know, which state the case so clearly, so scientifically as theosophic literature has done. I know of no other book which contains such a wealth of information as The Secret Doctrines, and I'm pretty sure we have that one, Cindy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have. There are, of course, the sacred books of the Hindus and other nations, and there is a great deal on the subject in those, but it is not put in a way which makes it easy for us. And this is where it's really hard, like even reading the Bible, because parables confuse people. Because you can read a parable and there's three meanings to it. Which one you're going to choose? Are you going to choose the bad one, the middle one, or the right one? And all these ancient teachings, they have lots to see which door you're going to open. And in all the cultures, everything God ever gave to this world, there's truths. And you have to figure them out. Very cool, Ephraim. You had a dream of Mother Teresa in your late 20s. That's cool. We take up some of these beautiful translations of the Oriental works. And I jumped a little ahead, I think. I'm going to start over here. There are, of course, the sacred books of the Hindus and of other nations, and there is a great deal on this subject in those, but it is not put in a way which makes it easy for us, with our training, to assimilate it or to appreciate it. When having read theosophical books, we took up some of those beautiful translations of Oriental works. We can see our theosophy in them in the Christian Bible, though that is in many places not well translated from your point of view. We shall find a great deal of theosophy, but before we can find it, we must know the system. We have studied theosophy. We see at once how many texts support it and cannot rationally be explained without it. We see how church ceremonies, before apparently meaningless, leapt into life under the illumination of the teaching and became vivid and full of interest. Yet I never heard of anyone who was able to deduce, deduce, the theosophic system from either the text or the ceremonies. And this is where people always want to prove everything is a lie. They're always looking for the dark. They never want to see the light and the truth, because if you do, you're going to find it in everything. So one way of approaching the path is by being with those who are already treading it. And that's where people are brought to me. Because I can teach, I can help them open doors and find things. But I can't make anybody think and do anything. I try to offer my help. That's about all I can do. Another way is by reading or hearing about it. All this teachings, this is why I said I'm reading this to you all. Because some of you will get the book and never read it. You all say, yeah. I had friends buy Barbara Brennan's 3 books, and they put them on the shelf. And years later, they're still sitting there. They have never opened those books. I'm like, why didn't you read them? You'd have all your answers. You'd already be doing stuff with energy and learning and growing. But they still sit there. I've given people a book 20 years ago and said, read this, you'll have all your answers. If I go and visit that person, that book's still on that shelf, and they have not opened it yet or even read it. And I'm like, I try to help people all the time. Another way is by reading or hearing about it. All this teaching came to me in 1882 through Mr. Sinnett's book, The Occult World, and immediately after that, I read his second book, Esoteric Buddhism. I knew at once instinctively that what was written was true, and I accepted it. And to hear and to read about it at once fired me with a desire and a determined intention to know more, to learn all I could on the subject. to pursue it all over the world, if necessary, until I found it. Shortly after that, I gave up my position in the Church of England and went out to India because it seemed that more could be done there. Those are two ways in which people are led to the path: by reading and hearing of it, and by being in close association with those who are already treading it. The third way, which is mentioned in the Oriental books, is by intellectual development. So it's about here. And that's why I'm like, put the right things in this holographic machine. Learn how to use this correctly. Learn to connect it to here. The biggest journey is 2 feet into your heart. Getting out of your mind and seeing and knowing what the heart is telling and showing you, and then journeying back to your mind and not turning it into bullshit. Not taking it into the sewer system and turning it into crap. And that's only 4 feet. People are astro traveling, trying to be shamans, trying to do all kinds of stuff. I'm like, for what? You're billions of years old. You have so much knowledge, and you're going to people to teach you to be all kinds of things. You took a 2-day workshop to be a shaman, and you got a certificate on your wall. No. I'm at my age. I'm in my 60s, and I still got thousands of things to learn. And if I want to be, in the fifth dimension, I got to live thousands of years and keep growing and growing and evolving. I'm not going to hide in a monastery. I'm not going to shave my head and be a Buddhist monk. No, I'm going to gain all the knowledge and I'm going to live. Okay. Those are two ways in which people are led to the path: by reading, hearing it, or by being in close association with those who are already treading it. The third way, which is mentioned in the Oriental books, is by intellectual development. By sheer force of hard thinking, a man may come to grasp some of these principles. The third way, which is mentioned in the Oriental book, is by intellectual development. By sheer force of hard thinking, a man may come to grasp some of these principles. Though I think that method is rare, again, they tell us of the fourth way, that by the long practice of virtue, man may come to the beginning of the path. That a man may so develop the soul by steadily practicing the right, so far as he knows it, that eventually more and more of the light will come upon and open up before him. And that's where you bring that light inside. You don't poison your body with drugs, booze, and that. And this is where you're going to really become spiritual. You go into these things. The Buddhist classification. It says 40 years ago, when the qualifications for the path were first put before me from the esoteric Buddhist point of view, they were given as follows. The first of them, discrimination, called by the Hindus Viveka, Viveka. Viveka was described as Manodvarvarajana. Manodvarvarajana, which means the opening of the door of the mind, or perhaps escaping by the door of the mind. That is a very interesting way of putting it, since discrimination arises from the fact that our minds have been opened in such a way that we can understand what is real and what is unreal, what is desirable and what is undesirable, and can distinguish between the pairs of opposites. The second qualification is desirelessness, and everybody is in their desires. Everybody wants and wants and wants, and they just live for their desires. That's who the hubcap master was. You never could never get him to understand this, and he'd always tell me about the 4 agreements and everything, and he never lived by them. And he was trying to beat up everybody with the 4 agreements while he was abusing everything in spirituality and life and everything else. So desirelessness, the second qualification, known as, I think I did that one? No. known as Virya Gaya, Vairagya, among the Hindus, was taught by Parikama, Parikama, meaning preparation for action. The idea being we must prepare ourselves for the action in the occult world by learning to do right purely for the right's sake. And people want to learn this, but they don't want to do it right. They want to go, oh, well, that person does this, so I'm just going to do it too. And that's what the 3D New Age healing is all about. They don't want to believe in karma. They don't want to believe in universal law. They don't want to believe in spirituality. They don't want to believe in God. They just want to do anything they want. They don't want to do anything right. They just want a quick door, open this, jump through it, close it, do something there, run through the next door, open, close it, jump into the next thing. And you watch people doing this everywhere, going in and out of ceremonies, abusing everything. This involves the attainment of a condition of higher indifference in which one certainly no longer cares for the result of action. And so it comes to mean the same thing as desirelessness, though it is put from a different point of view. The 6 points of good conduct, called Shat Sampati in the Hindu scheme, were given by Upachara Patro, Upacharo, which means attention to conduct. For the convenience of the student who would like to compare the 6 points with those given in attention to conduct. For the convenience of the student who would like to compare the 6 points with those given in Invisible Helper. These are called Pali, Pali, Samo, quietude, the purity and the calmness of thought which comes from perfect control of the mind, a qualification exceeding difficulty of attainment and yet most necessary, for unless the mind moves only in obedience and in guidance of the will, it cannot be a perfect instrument for the Master's work in the future. This qualification is a very comprehensive one, and it includes within itself both the self-control and the calmness necessary for astral work. So this is why you got to go into a really happy place. When you're meditating, you're not doing it aggressively, angrily, forcing, commanding, and doing things. When you watch a old Buddhist monk, you're going to see him just smiling when he goes in, and he's just beaming, and he's just smiling like a little boy. And he's sitting there just quiet, and he's watching everything he's being shown, he's listening to everything he's being told, and he's just allowing the universe to do everything, and he's just playing in his mind. Because he has no fear of the universe. He has no fear of anything. And when you're meditating, you have to go there. But if you're looking for power and you're forcing and doing things, then you're going to force everything. You're not going to care. So Master's work in the future, this qualification is very comprehensive one that includes within itself both the self-control and the calmness necessary for astral work. Dhammo is subjugation, a similar mastery over and therefore purity in one's actions and words, a quality which again follows necessarily from its predecessor. Uparati, Uparati, is cessation, explained as cessation from the bigotry or from belief in the necessity of any act or ceremony prescribed by a particular religion, so leading the aspirant to independence of thought and to a wide and generous tolerance. Tit 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 tat tit or T tick ah. So TITIKKHA. Endurance of forbearance, that's what the word means. By which is meant the readiness to bear the cheerful whatever one's karma may bring upon him, and apart with anything and everything worldly whenever it may be necessary. It also includes the idea of complete absence of resentment for wrong, the man knowing those who do him wrong are but instruments of his own karma. That's why a lot of things happen to us. In this word here of endurance and forbearance is something everybody's going through right now. People are trying to hang on and fight for all kinds of things, and it's literally exhausting them. It's literally everything is falling apart and getting obliterated. And we're all going through that, all of us in some way. Saddha, Saddha, which is faith, confidence in one's master and one's self. Confidence, that is, that the master is the competent teacher, and that, however defiant the pupil may feel as his own powers, he has yet with him the divine spark which, when fanned into a flame, will one day enable him to achieve even as his master has done. So you will eventually, if you're really following the true Joshua ben Joseph, one day you will be like him, and he says you will be more than him. So you'll be more than Jesus. And he's giving you permission to go way beyond him. If you're following Buddha, you will do even more than Buddha eventually. And then the fourth qualification of Hindu classification is called Mumukshutva, Mumukshutva, usually translated as an adherent longing for liberation from the wheel of birth and death. While among the Buddhists the name gives to it is Anuloma, Anuloma, which means direct order of succession, signifying that its attainment follows as a natural consequence from the other three. And in Buddhism, the whole idea is to become Buddha. That's why all these monks are all trying to become Buddha. And they're all trying to attain all these things and become. And some of them maybe will become more than Buddha. And they will be the new teachers in the fourth and fifth dimension. But everybody is, if you're calling in a teacher, they're going to do everything to move you into bigger and bigger things. But people get scared because they say you can never be Jesus. You can't be this, you can't be that. And you got to cower in fear and believe that these vengeful, disastrous gods are going to punish you. You even think of being like them. And that is not a truth. Hindu yoga. The series of qualifications described above at once seem to be quite in accordance with those given at the feet of the master. So that's a book, which in turn have exactly the same framework as those mentioned in the books ascribed in Hindu Shankaracharya. I don't know how to say that. Shankaracharya and his followers. So I don't know who that guy is. For the use of candidates aiming at yoga, the term yoga, which has long been used in India, means union. So you're trying to unite with the universe. You're trying to get all your chakras, everything in alignment with this higher truth. And that's what you're really doing. You're not trying to get high and stoned on energy. And that's all people want to do. Means union, and as that is generally considered to imply union with the divine, it is in fact unity. But the expression refers in all the different schools of yoga in India not only to the distinct goal of union, but also to the method of training prescribed as leading to that goal. Therefore, some say that the meaning of yoga is meditation, which plays a large part in most of the systems. And this is where people try to go on really long, arduous meditations after yoga and things. I'm like, why? I don't like sitting in meditation for a couple of days at a time. I like going in and out of it. Blip here, blip there, do this, do that. just like dancing. It must not be assumed, however, that meditation is not only or even the principal means to yoga, for there have been and still are many different schools, each having its own special method. Professor Ernest Wood has described the 7 principal schools of yoga in Raja Yoga, so that's another book. The occult training of the Hindus, so Rajayoga. The occult training of the Hindus, and has shown how they belong each to one of the 7 rays, and that's where I read the 7 rays, the 7 chakras. In yoga, you are connected to one of these, and that's where you're connected to. If you're meant to be in the heart in this lifetime, then there's a group of people on the planet who are all in the heart chakra. Some people are throat chakra, some people are solar plex, some people are sacral. But everybody's trying to be the commander of the ship and being the crown chakra. And they're trying to force everything to be here. They're not trying to work and figure out what they need to do. So they're just pounding energies and everything, doing stuff. So describes the 7, where am I here? Okay, I'll go back. It must not be assumed, however, that meditation is the only or even the principal means to yoga, for there have been and still are many different schools, each having its own special method. Professor Ernest Wood has described the 7 principal schools of yoga in Raja Yoga, the occult training of the Hindus, and has shown how they belong each to one of the 7 rays, so they must be regarded as complementary and not as rival methods of practice. Because each one, if you have to be the heart chakra, there's certain things you got to learn to practice and do to access that. And this is where you got to find your truth, your knowledge. So that they must be regarded as complementary and not as rival methods of practice. Each great teacher expounded a method suited to one type of ego, a fact so well known among the Hindus, and that's what people in Western society have no idea. Hey, hippie chick. Each great teacher expounded a method suited to one type of ego, a fact so well known among the Hindus that they are always liberal and tolerant in their thought and considered perfectly right for each man to follow the method which suits his temperament. And this is where we all got our own paths. And there's lots of things on our paths to learn. When you really understand this, you stop beating yourself up. That's why I say there's lots of ways to meditate. And you'll find the one that works for you. And I know people who go to Buddhist temples sitting there going, oh, and they come out of there just pissed off because they can never go in there. And I'm like, why have you spent 5 years doing this? Why don't you just go walk in a forest? Or why don't you just go sit by a stream and be quiet? Why don't you just wash your dishes and go into altered meditation? Why don't you just do laundry or mop your floor? And you're in a altered meditation place. Why don't you just paint? Real simple ways to meditate and go in altered states and open yourself up to the Creator, to everything in creation. But people are trying every stupid thing and getting mad at themselves, trying to force stuff. The book explains that each school there are certain characteristics similar to those which prevail in teaching of our masters. There is always a primary training accompanied by the requirement of a high moral attainment before the candidate can enter the path proper. And on reaching the path, he is always advised to seek masters or gurus. And this is where you got to find teachers for the right reasons. People don't do that. They find something and they just stay to it and they just hate it and they do it and do it. And everybody walks around in their pretty Lululemons with their little head buns and their malas, and they're all saying namaste, just full of anger and hate. People need to grow up. So once more, 3 primary teachings are given. Oh, I jumped. I think I went way too far there. Yeah, I got to go back here. So before the candidate can enter the path of proper, and on reaching the path, he is always advised to seek a master or guru. In the school of Patanjali, Patanjali, for example, which is the first to be treated, as it is the oldest of which we have any writings recorded, there are 10 commandments, the first 5 of which are negative: probationary injury to others, untruth, theft, incontinence, and greed. A lot of people, when they go into Reiki and that's the first thing they go into. And it's a test if they're going to wake up and get themselves out and go into other things. And this is something the universe watches for a person go, whoa, I'm moving on from this. I'm finding something different. And there's lots of practices where doors will open. And all of a sudden people think they're powerful. They think all kinds of things, and they do really lots of stuff that's very, very destructive. And in this ancient practice, they know the first 10 commandments, which are negative, and the second 5 positive: enjoying cleanliness, contentment, effort, study, and devotion. So when you get off these paths, you start going more into these 5 other truths. But we all, right from teenage, we go into all kinds of crazy things. And we got to look at, why are we doing this? Is this really, really what we want to create and do? In the primary course of training, there are 3 requirements: tapas, or effort; savanya, or study of one's own nature with the aid of the scriptures. And that's where you got to study all of these ancient things, and you have to realize what they're telling you and teaching you. You can't, ignore them, because it's like reading the Bible. And it all has something to teach you, and you got to go into it, study it, like Buddhism. You keep repeating something over and over and over in Buddhism, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I get it. And this is where persistence, this is where finding the right mantras, the right energy, the right people, your family. People will support you when you're in these confusing places, and they will stay there until they see you get it, and they will try to teach and guide you until you move past that. Then you teach people. The study of one's own nature with the aid of scriptures, the Ishvara, the Paranidhana, so ISHVARA/PRANIDHANAA, or devotion to God at all times. And when you're doing yoga, you have to be devoted straight to God. Not thinking about the party or the wine or the orgies later on or all the pretty clothes or whatever. It's not what yoga is about. It's supposed to be devoted to God all the time. These authors compare respectively with the other 3 qualifications of the Shatsampati, Shatsampatti, or good conduct. And that's where you learn to start living, because the universe is watching you. It knows what you're thinking and doing. And you got to get out of that. Are you going to go on being the prancing queen? I used to really like that song by ABBA, Dancing Queen. But I used to always say prancing queen, because everybody's in this illusion. They're all dancing around, and you watch those guys on ABBA. You should watch them when they sing that song on stage, and they go to these high notes, and they're just dancing around, and everybody's like, ooh, just in love with them. These the author compare respectively to the 3 qualifications of the Shatsampati, or good conduct, which involves the use of the will in the number of efforts, the Viveka, or discrimination, which implies understanding of the true and the false, inside and outside of oneself. So you got to see what is true, right or wrong, good or bad, and decide if you want to change it. Yes, Boney M. I'm pretty sure it was Boney M that sang Dancing Queen. No, it was ABBA. ABBA, remember ABBA? The Scandinavian, four of them? Inside and outside oneself, the Vivarya, or desireless, since personal emotions can be best be transcribed by devotion. And this is where a lot of people really, really fail when they're practicing yoga, because they want to desire everything. When they walk in that yoga studio, they are the movie star. They are dressed up just so sexy so they could fart in somebody's face and they're just going to gyrate. And they all got all their beautiful tattoos on and their malas and their head buns. And they're all just trying to impress one another because they're all in their desire. And it's a personal emotions can be best be transcribed by devotion. And you have to go past all of that into desirelessness. After developing these primary requirements, the candidate on the path uses his will to master and employ every part of his nature in a series of steps: physical, etheric, astral, mental, and beyond. And because of this, the school is described as of the first ray. And remember when the first ray in the seven rays? This one, first ray, on which the use of the will predominates. The second school of yoga is the Sri Krishna, particularly expounded in great poem of the Bhagavata Gita. I know I have that one here somewhere. Oh, and I have that book. And so there's really lots of stuff in that book. So the Bhagavata Gita, which has been translated with such accuracy and beauty by our president, and also in the freer rendings of Sir Edwin Arnold under the title of The Song Celestial. So that's another book, The Song Celestial. This teaches above all else the doctrines of love, the discipline Arjuna, Rajuna. So this is a guy in the book, to whom the Guru spoke, was a great lover of mankind according to the scriptures. Of this great soldier sank down upon the floor of his chariot before the battle of the Kurukshetra, Kuruksetra, began, full of sorrow because he loved his enemies and could not bear to injure them. The teacher Sri Krishna then explained to him, amid much philosophical teachings, that the greatest thing in life is service, that God himself is the greatest server, for he keeps the wheels of life revolving, not because any benefits can possibly occur to him in consequence, but for the sake of the world, and then that man should follow his example and work for the welfare of mankind. Many great ones, he said, had reached perfection by following the path of life, by doing their duty without personal desire. To love without ceasing is a way of the second ray. And I can't remember, but I think this is second in the seven flames. The second ray. Okay, he keeps the wheels of life revolving, not because of benefit he can possibly occur to him in consequence, but for the sake of the world, Men should follow his example and work for the welfare of mankind. Many great ones, he said, had reached perfection by following the path of life, by doing their duty without personal desire. To love without ceasing is a way of second ray. In the Gita, it is shown how this love should be directed to men and other beings in karma yoga, the yoga by action or work, and to God in the bhakti yoga, Bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. So if you're going to do bhakti yoga, you're going to do devotion. So your whole focus on God, not anything else on this planet, on the universal light. Once more, three primary teachings are given. To reach the love wisdom, a candidate must practice devotion or reverence, inquiry or investigation, and service, the first involving right emotion, the second right thought and understanding, the third right use of the will to practice life, which again are compared to our first three qualifications. It is particularly interesting to notice that the teachers say that when the candidate has prepared himself in this triple way, the wise ones who know the essence of things will teach you the wisdom. And that's what you're trying to seek in yoga. You're not trying to be perfect in the pose. You're not looking around in the yoga studio to see who's winking at you. You're not trying to fly through the air waving a wand like you're some sort of fairy godmother sprinkling dust on everybody. In other words, the aspirant will find the masters. And that's what you're trying to do when you're doing yoga. It's not about the teacher and the people you're joining or the studio or anything. That's why when you're in India, if you're going to become a yogi, you walk away from your family, your kids, and everything, and your devotion is to one thing, is to the light, to the masters. And you will give up everything, food, water, clothing, anything. And you'll focus on this one thing. If you want to become a yogi, that's what you end up doing. The third school of the Shakracharya, I don't know. I'm not even going to try to pronounce some of these words. I'll just spell them. Shansaracharya. As already mentioned, presents the qualification in the order in which we have them, placing viveka or discrimination first. It is intended for those people whose temperament leads them to want to understand what they are about. So this is what you want to figure out. Not only what service they ought to perform, but in what way their contribution fits into the scheme of things and the development of mankind. It must be noted the Master Kuthumi, in presenting these qualifications, has interpreted them all newly in the light of love. The fourth school is Hatha Yoga. Rightly understood, it involves a severe physical purification and training. So if you're going into Hatha Yoga, you want to purify. And you don't want to be sexual anymore or goddess or a movie star. You don't want shiny teeth or anything, you know. You're trying to purify your soul. That's why you're practicing that. And training intended to bring the body into a perfect state of health, orderly function, and refinement so as to enable the ego using it to attain as much as is possible for him in the present incarnation. And this is where you're trying to bring in the biggest light to help the whole planet, not yourself. To this end, there are many practices, including breathing exercises, intended to act upon the nervous system and the etheric double, as well as upon those parts of the dense body usually trained in the course of physical culture. Unfortunately, very much of what appears in the popular literature on this subject reflects only a superstitious distortion of the real teachings. And that's all people have, is a superstitious distortions of the real teachings, and describes various repellent forms of subjugation and mortifications of the body which were common also in Europe a few centuries ago. But in all the Sanskrit books dealing with Hatha Yoga, it is clearly stated that the object of the physical practice is to bring the body into the highest state of health and efficiency. And that's where you want to become a master. And you work with the beings, you become pure light. The fifth school, dominated Laya Yoga, aims at awakening the higher faculties of man through the knowledge of the Kundalini, the serpent power, which is most people lie latent at the base of the spine, of the seventh chakra, or force centers through which the awakening power is guided. To these centers and this force, I have already written to some extent the inner life and the hidden sides of things. So those are two books again, the inner life and the hidden sides of things. I have now gathered this material together, made some additions to it, and published a monograph on the subject with larger colored illustrations of the seven chakras and, of course, of the various puranas or streams of vitality. And it says the author's book, The Chakras, issued by the Theosophical Publishing House, Adyar Madras, Adyar, and the capital Madras. The method of this and the previous schools are not, however, recommended to Western students, or indeed to anyone who is not specifically directed by the competent teacher to practice them. They are suitable only to those who have the Oriental physical hereditary and can live as simply and peacefully as do some Orientals. For others, they are not only unlikely to be successful, but are distinctly dangerous to their health and even to life. And people hear about this and start practicing it. They don't understand it. I have known many sad cases of disease and madness to the result from attempts on these lines, especially in America. And this is where they say Kundalini cuckoo. Hey, Rachel. The sixth school is the bhakti or devotion. This is also taught to a large extent by the Bhagavad Gita, indeed. We find it in every religion among those true devotees who put their trust entirely in the divine, who do not pray for personal favor but are quite convinced that God is perfect master and his world, and he knows what he is doing. And that's where I say God knows everything. He's known it for billions of years. He knows what to do to heal and change his world. You don't have to tell him. I figured that out a long time ago, that God was way smarter than I ever will be. And he knows what he is doing, and therefore all is well. Everything is well. Everything that's going on the planet is perfect. They are therefore more than content. They are thrilled with ecstasy if they can but have the opportunity and privilege to serve and obey him in any way. And that's where you become muskapios. That's what Jesus done. He was obedient. Same with Buddha and all these masters and teachers and guides. They brought the knowledge and then they took it to the highest. They want to teach it to you. Hope this is making sense. Mantras. Lastly, we have the seventh school, which in India is called Mantra Yoga. It may well be to expound its principles here at somewhat greater length than the other, for the ray of which it is one of the principal expressions is just now becoming dominant in the world. It is playing a large and increasing part among us in both East and West. Two great examples of the method are to be seen in the works of the liberal Catholic Church, the co-masonries in which our masters are keenly interested. Indeed, they are employing them with great benefits to mankind and for rapid achievement on the path of those who take active parts in the movements. The word mantra is Sanskrit. So when you say the word mantra, it's Sanskrit. It's an ancient word and is practically equivalent to our word charm or spell. So when you're doing a mantra over and over and over, it's like doing a charm or a spell. The majority of mantras used in India for good purposes are verses from the Vedas. So the Vedas, have you ever heard of them? Pronounced with intention according to the tradition methods which are the outcome of practical occult knowledge. There are also many mantras employed by men who follow the tantras, and those are just as often used for evil as for good. So we find afloat in India a great number of them, both desirable and undesirable. If we are to classify them from our Western point of view, I would say there are 5 main types of these mantras. So the first one, those that work simply by faith. Next one, those that work by association. Next one, those that work by agreement or covenant. And then those that work by their meaning. And then the last one is those that work by their sound without reference to meaning. And then the effects of faith. Trying to see how much more to this chapter. Now, around 12 pages. We'll see, I'll go with it. I'll see if I'll do it all or not. So the effects of faith, because this is really, really deep, this stuff. And if it's shaking all kinds of things and rattling your bones, then like I say, it's trying to make you really, really understand the effects of faith. The first class produce their effort simply because of the first conviction and operation that the result may follow, and because of faith of the person upon whom they are operating. If both men are quite sure that something will happen, say a cure or a wound or a disease, then that thing does happen. In some cases, the faith of only one of the parties seemed to be sufficient. This is where in native spirituality, you want everybody to pray out loud, because there might be one person in the crowd and that person's praying is going to bless everybody. And this is something in natives we believe. Just because I'm the elder, if I put out a pipe and everything, doesn't mean maybe today God's going to hear my prayer. Maybe it's your prayer that's going to bless everybody and bring the good. In England, and indeed among the peasants of all countries, quite a number of such charms are being used in country places. People have little forms of words, generally semi-religious in character, which have been handed down to them by their forefathers. And that's nasty energy. They often seem the merest nonsense, and the wording is frequently not even coherent. They are probably corruptions of certain forms of words, either in English or in some case Latin or French. They do not work by sound, for they have none of the sonetry indispensables to the true mantra. But when recited over patients under certain conditions, they are at times unquestionably effective. In such cases, it must be faith in the ancient formula which produces the result. Many familiar charms found in the Oriental countries appear to act through faith. Like they have all kinds of symbols. You hang things in your home, you buy little objects and that, and they have faith that those things work. And that's like talismans. I can give one example from my personal knowledge, which I suspect to be of that nature. Once, when I was in the interior of Ceylon, I was bitten rather badly in the hand by a dog. The wound was bleeding considerably. A casual passerby, an agricultural laborer by the looks of him, rushed up, snapped a leaf off the nearest shrub, pressed it on the wound, and muttered some words which I could not understand. The wound immediately stopped bleeding. This charm, therefore, undoubtedly worked, and certainly not through any faith of mine, for I had no idea what the man was going to do, As is always in the case in the East, a man would not take any money for the exercise of his powers. And that's what Christians do. All of a sudden, they'll say in the name of Jesus and their faith, and they'll just start praying and doing all kinds of stuff. But they'll only believe it if it's from Jesus. They won't do anything unless Jesus gives them permission. So far as I was able to hear the words, I should say that they were incoherent, or if coherent, were at any rate neither sinhasles, Sinhalese, and that's where even witches, they will do spells and incantations because they believe in it. It's like people believe in the evil eye. That's why it works, because whoever's into that affects them because they believe in that. And it's all your belief, which would have been a man's own language, nor Sanskrit. I have been told that there are similar charms amongst snake bites in Ceylon, and they also appear to work again by faith. I imagine everyone concerned is sure that something is going to happen, and so it does happen. And same with black magic. They believe what they believe. And if you fear it, then you must believe that it's going to do something, so whatever they're doing is going to affect you. There is a variant of this type in which success is achieved by the strength of the will of the operator. As he speaks his words or makes his sign, he is utterly determined that a given result shall follow, and according to it does follow. So whatever he believes, it will happen. I have seen Prince Hushstring, whatever, I don't know this guy's name, I won't even bother saying it, of Kathwar cures instantaneously a man suffering from a sting of a scorpion. The man was already pallid, half fainting from fright, withering and groaning in acute pain, and scarcely able to drag himself along with the assistance of two friends. The prince made over the wound a sign of a five-pointed star, spoke sharply one Sanskrit word, and in the moment the victim, so had sunk to the ground, staggered to his feet, declaring himself well and entirely free from pain, then proceeded to prostrate himself before the prince in gratitude. And this is where belief is really, really powerful. Association of thought. So when you associate with other people's thoughts and things, that's where people want to get in groups and they want to be like, so they will associate. So you'll join a church, you'll join this, you'll join that. Yeah, have a good day, Mother Creator. Association of thought. There are mantras that work by association. Certain forms of words bring with them definite ideas and quite change the current of our thoughts and feelings. An example of this is national anthem. And that's where the Americans, they sing this anthem to the flag for their country. And you listen to the words. It's interesting if you really, really figure it out. It's like even Canada. When I was a little child in school, when I was in residential school, they made me go to school. We had to stand by our desk, and there was a big giant picture of the Queen. We all had to stare at her and put our hands over our heart and sing this God Save the Queen. And I wouldn't. And the teacher would come over and grab me and throw me around and slap me and hit me with rulers and smack me, trying to make me stand up and do that and sing the song. And I'm like, no, I won't. And I would sit back down and she would beat me more, then send me to the principal. And then I get strapped and I get put in a closet and I get yelled at every day. I would not get up. Eventually they stopped. I says, I will not sing for this woman. I will not ask God to bless her. And I didn't care what they did to me. I wouldn't do it. So the national anthem, the tune is simple and strong, but hardly a high rank as a melody. The words, regarding merely as poetry, have in themselves no special merit. If it were to use but one song among many other songs, it would probably attract but little attention. But our association with it is that loyalty to the king. And in Canada, we sing for the king and queens, right? And through him to the spiritual king. So even in England, they probably have songs too, whose representative he is. And the king says he's the Pope. You pray to him before you can go to heaven if you're in England. And so powerful is the association that soon as we hear that strain, we straighten ourselves up and instinctively pour out our loyalty and goodwill towards the rulers of the land. This invokes a definite response from according to the law. Force so outpoured unselfishly must be called down, a corresponding descent of power from on high. So when you're doing that, you're telling the universe to bless and protect the kings and queens and barons and landowners on the planet. This response comes through certain types of angels connected with the work of the first ray, and the attention of these is attracted wherever the national anthem is sung. So every country has their own. And the attention of these attract whatever the national anthem is sung. They pour out their blessings upon and through people whose loyalty has been thereby stimulated. And it opens up your subconscious to agree with it all. Another example, though far less powerful, of a similar type of mantra is the voice, that breath, O ear Eden. So O with a little tiny comma, ER, and then Eden, EDEN. We cannot hear that hymn without thinking strongly of a wedding and all the festival feelings of goodwill actually connected with such a function. Various Christmas hymns and carols also invoke in our mind a very definite stream of thought. The war cries which play so prominent a part in the battles of medieval times were mantras of this type. There are a number of such forms which instantly call up corresponding ideas, and they produce results because of their association and not because of anything inherent in themselves. There are a number of such forms which instantly call up corresponding ideas, and they produce results because of their association and not because of anything inherent in themselves. It is interesting to see the effects produced upon the people by these words. It is far more than mere thought of the meaning, for it calls up those who hear it in a fiery faith, a fanatical outburst of devotion which is quite beautiful in its way and very characteristics of the hot modism. This might be mere instance of association for the fact that angels of certain types are evoked by the call, and it is their action which causes much of the enthusiasm which is exhibited. It is perhaps the Christian religion that we find the best examples of this third type of mantra, as those who know anything of the service of the church. So anyways, with these angels, you can see now they're talking about in Christianity and stuff like that in churches. And the greatest of them all is the capital HOC. Sorry, I'll do it again. Capital HOC, and then small, there's a gap between, and then a small EST, and then corpus, CORPUS, and then meum, MEUM, capital MEUM. This is my body, so it's Latin, meaning this is my body, for the Christ himself has made a covenant with his church that whenever it is called, this call is uttered, wherever those words are pronounced in any language by one of his duly ordained priests, he will respond therefore. But this power is given under conditions, given only to those who are prepared by another mantra of the same type to receive it. A mantra also prescribed by Christ himself, the word, receive you the Holy Ghost. So this is where the God energy comes in. And this is something they invoke. They don't tell you this in church. When these preachers do all this stuff and they're doing their this and that, and the Pope and that, they're saying all kinds of Latin things. They don't tell you what they're saying and doing. And they're doing spells, they're doing all kinds of different things, and you're accepting whatever they're telling you. The power which these words he gave to his disciples just before he left them has been handed down with some words in the unbroken chain for nigh 2,000 years, and constitute what is called the apostolic the apostolic succession. Wherever the priest who has been duly ordained in the succession pronounces with intention those other words, "This is my body," a certain wonderful change is thereby brought about in the bread over which he speaks them, so that though its outwardly appearance remains the same, its higher principle or counterparts are superseded by the very life of the Christ himself, so that it becomes just as truly his vehicle as the body which ye wore in Palestine. There is no doubt of the working of the mantra, "This is my body," for it's an action can he seen today by those who have eyes to see. Lord Tennyson, Tennyson, Lord Tennyson tells us in the Iliads of the king of the Gileads, describing the celebration of the Eucharist, said, "I saw the fiery face as a child and smote itself into the bread." So that's what he wrote. I don't know when he did that because the Iliads is very old, or Iliads. I saw the fiery face as of a child that smote itself into the bread. And like I say, this old English sometimes really hard to understand, break down and understand. And just so many clairvoyants who watch the offerings of the same holy sacrifice today may see the counterpart of the bread flash out in a line of living light when the same sacred mantra is spoken. All the branches of the Christian Church, the Roman Catholic, the Greek Orthodox, the Anglican, the Liberal Catholic Church, that celebrates the Holy Eucharist, that all in the form which was laid down by Christ, use those words in the institution as part of their liturgy, and in all of them, what wonderful results is produced. All these branches of the church do invoke the angelic host to assist in the service. They call in all kinds of angels. When they invoke these things, they call this in. That's why when you do things, you got to call in all kinds of higher divine beings, angelic hosts, to assist in the service. And that is done not only by the particular form of words, but also when the service is sung by a particularly form of music, by arrangement of sound, which is persisted with by slight variations from an early period in the history of the church. The angels of a specific type take those words as calls and at once attend to play their part in the service which is to be held. For the full account of workings of the most miraculous mantras, see The Science of the Sacraments. That's another book again. The effects of repetition. We come now to a class of mantras which act by virtue of the meaning of the word repeated. The man recites a certain form of words with firm confidence over and over again, so that their meaning beats very strongly upon his brain and upon his mental body. And if he is trying, for instance, to do a certain piece of occult work, such a repetition will greatly strengthen his will. Such mantras can be used in many different ways. As far as a man is concerned, they produce one of two effects: either by strengthening his will to do that which he is trying to do, or they impress upon him the absolute convictions that it will be done. Mantras of this type appear in daily meditation prescribed for the Hindus, and that's why they play music over and over in background, constantly having this chant going. If you go in Hindus' places, you'll hear different kinds of music, even Sikhs and that, and they have this going over and over. It's like if you're a Muslim and you go over and live in Muslim countries, 5 times a day they have that guy go up in the tower and he sings these mantras and these songs, and everybody gets on their knees and they do this 5 times a day, and they invoke these things, and everybody accepts and does this. As far as man's concerned, they produce one of two effects: either they strengthen his will to do that which he is trying to do, or they impress upon him the absolute conviction that it will be done. Mantras of this type appear in the daily meditations prescribed for Hindus and most occult schools. The repetition of certain sentences that fix points during the day tends to impress the idea contained in the sentence strongly upon the mind. More radiant than the sun, purer than snow, subtler than ether, is the self, your overself, your God self. The spirit within my heart, I am that self, that I am I. And that is a mantra. I am that self I am, or am I, is a good example of this type of mantra, and it is, of course, just as effective when thought as when spoken. So, some things, when you think them, it triggers energies and things to come through. And I hope that's making sense to all of you. Blessings. Under the heading should come the various types of blessings such are given in the church, in Freemasonry, and by pupils of our masters. Blessings may be arranged in two sections, those which a man gives from himself and those which are given through him as an official by a higher power. And this is where, like I say, even AA, they tell you believe in your higher power. This first kind of blessing is merely an expression of the earnest good wish. A typical instance of this is the blessing sometimes given by a father to his son, either on the deathbed of a former or when the latter is about to start in some long and possible dangerous journey. The blessing of the dying Isaac to his son Esau and Jacob is a good illustration. Though in that particular case, complications were introduced by the scandalous duplicity of Jacob. Reading the scriptures accounts of his incident will remember that Isaac was fully persuaded of the effectiveness of his blessing, and when he discovered the deceit which had been practiced upon him, he was unable to revise the wish which he had expressed. The question then arises, does a blessing of this nature bring any results? And if so, how is that result produced? The only reply that can be given is that this will depend upon the earnestness of the good wish and the amount of spiritual force put into it. The blessing makes a thought form which attaches itself to the person who is blessed. And this is where I don't accept everybody's blessings. And I don't want everybody accepting mine when I pray. It's like, if you want me to pray for you, I will ask the universe and I will ask that you receive the blessings that I'm guided to do. And when you invite it in, it will help you. Because like my mom prays all the time for me because she wants me to be stuck on a path and she believes I'm a sinner and I'm doing evil. And she sends spirits and everything to me constantly. And I'm like, no, I send them back to God to be transformed back into light. And I thank her for her prayers or whatever her thoughts are, but I know I'm on my path and I don't need that. And there's lots of people, like some people have fantasies, so they pray over and over and over, you belong to them. And they'll do spells, they'll do anything. And they'll destroy your lives to have you. And when they have you, when everything goes bad, they'll throw you in the garbage dump and they'll go find somebody else to destroy again. And they believe in this. And there are witches and there are warlocks and there are all kinds of things all over the world that do that. There's all kinds of brujos, there's all kinds of, you can pay all kinds of spiritual people to do certain spells. Even there's Christian ones. They have all kinds of spells. And like I say, you believe in them. The blessing makes a thought form which has attached itself to the person who is blessed. The size, strength, and persistence of that thought form depends upon the willpower of the person giving the benediction. So if your parents think you're evil and you're on the wrong path and they prayed all their lives to keep you there, that thought form is really strong trying to keep you stuck. And maybe you're on the right path and they're the ones who are causing you nothing but grief. I always talk to God and the universe about this. I'm tired of people keeping me stuck in all kinds of stuff. And like I say, when I go to native ceremonies, all the native women think I belong to them. Oh, he's a medicine man, he belongs to me. And then they want to destroy Cindy and say, oh, she doesn't belong in my life. You're not supposed to teach her native stuff. You're not supposed to this. I'm like, you're not God. God put us together for a reason, and everything I taught her belongs to her. And there's a lot of native men are like, see Cindy as some sort of angelic being that walks on clouds, and all these native men want her, and they think that I'm stealing everything for her, so they curse me to destroy me, so they can end up being with her, and they destroy both our lives. And they believe in that. They think they're powerful. Your belief is very powerful. It's either good or it's harmful. Think about that. If the words were uttered as a matter of form without much feeling or intention behind them, the effects would be slight and transient. On the other hand, if they come from a full heart and were uttered with definite determination, their effects would be deep and lasting. The two types of blessings is that which is uttered by an official appointed for the purpose, through whom power flows with some higher source. A good example for this is the benedictions with which most church services conclude. This may not be given by anyone whose ecclesiastical rank is lower than that of a priest, and to the extent the blessings may be said to partake of the character of mantra of the third class, since the power of giving a definite blessing is one of those conferred upon the priest at his ordination. In this case, he is simply a channel for the power from on high, and if it should be unfortunately happen that he speaks it merely as a matter of course and as a part of his ritual, that would make no difference to the spiritual power outpoured. So when these angels and beings come in, when he commands this, that's why when you go in the church, you disagree with the preacher. He just does all these things, and you don't know what he's doing. You don't know what he's praying. You don't know what anything he's doing. But when you go to church, you just do it all. The blessings flow equally over all, and the amount of the influence which any individual can obtain from it depends upon the receptivity. So you got to want it. If it is full of love and devotion, he may be very greatly helped and uplifted. If he is carelessly thinking of some other matter, and this is where if the preacher is thinking of fornication and perversion and all kinds of stuff, and he does his blessing, he will gain only the benefits of the impact of the higher vibration. It will be noted that when a bishop is present at a service, he always pronounces the benediction. The reason for that is that at his consecration, his higher principles are opened up much beyond those of the priest. Therefore, power at those higher levels can be poured through him. The same general principle holds for Freemasonry, and it's even in like natives. We say we call in the four directions. Each direction we sing songs and we pray in the sweat lodge. And there's a certain part where you get healed, so we call it the doctoring round. And the first two rounds you pray for people, then you pray for yourself, then the doctoring round. And you do these things and it does stuff, it changes your life. The same general principle holds in the Freemasonry also, for it is only either an installed master or an ordained chaplain who pronounces the words of blessings in the course of closing of the lodge. We have already seen that one who has accepted as the pupil of a master has thereby become the channel for his influence, and while that influence is always flowing through the pupil, he can certainly direct its force for the moment upon any person as he wishes. In some way, one who is an initiate can give the blessings of the brotherhood, which is the truth that of the king, who is its head. And then the next one is power of sound. And that one takes us to the end. So this is a few pages, but it's all about sound. And everybody now is playing with sound all over the world. They're using sound. I've known about sound for a long time. And I know you can use it right or wrong depending on what's up here and what's here. And that's why people doing toning, doing all kinds of stuff, I'm really careful. I had a friend go to a singing bowl ceremony, and this person who was doing it was supposed to be way up here, and everybody just, thought the greatest of this person. So my friend took her mother with her, and they sat in this ceremony, and everybody just all dressed up and everything. And she starts with these singing bowls, and they said it was like somebody was taking spikes and stabbing them just over and over in the head and the chakras and the body, and it was just painful. And they sat in it until it was over. And when they left, they both, did you feel that? And they said they were just in so much pain and agony. I'm like, why did you stay there? Why didn't you just get up and walk out? Because whatever that person was doing was not love. We may now consider it a type of mantra which works only by the sound. The vibrations which the sound sets in motion impinges upon the various bodies of man and tends to bring them into harmony with it. And that's where people are using singing bowls and all kinds of stuff. They don't know what they're doing. A sound, in the first place, is undulation in the air. The very musical sound has a number of overtones which it sets in motion as well. 4 or 5 or more octaves are detected, recognized in music by the oscillation extended a great deal further than the ear can follow. Corresponding waves are set up in higher and finer matter altogether, and therefore the chanting of the note or the series of notes produce effects upon the higher vehicle. There are sounds, I suppose we must still call them sounds, overtones which are too fine to affect the air. Nevertheless, they set etheric matter in motion, and that etheric matter communicates its oscillation to the man who recites the mantra and also to other people around him. And if he is directing his will towards any particular person, to that person the vibration will assuredly will go. Thus the mantras which work by sound may produce decidedly material results of the physical plane, though there are others and finer waves sent forth at the same time which may affect the higher vehicles. So it'll even affect your oversoul and all kinds of higher things. Such a mantra usually consists of several orderly sounds, very resonant with sonorous in character, or sonorous in character. Sometimes a single syllable only is used, as in the sacred word Om. So when you're saying Om, you have to be in a really peaceful, happy state. And when you're doing it, if you do it over and you chant it correctly, it can put you in a really, really cool, altered state. But there are only several ways of saying it, and they produce quite different results, according to the note upon which the syllables are chanted, the way in which they are pronounced. For some purposes, we emphasize a prolonged and open sound. We combine the A, capital U, into O. Strengthen that carries it on for perhaps half the time of recitation, and then change to the M sound, like Om. I mean, they say it over a long, slow, but people say Om, Om, you're supposed to sing it. Some people say Om. That's where Amen comes in. You'll hear in some churches they say Amen. You say when you understand this, it's very, very powerful. Strengthen and carry it on perhaps half the time of recitation and then change to the M. But for other purposes, the O should be quite short. So sometimes you'll say Om. So the O is really short. And there's different pitches, high, low, different things. The O should be quite short and humming inside of the head in the center. So you go in here, you focus in here when you're doing it. which is very powerful. Sound should be prolonged. The result of these two methods differ greatly. When the O is prolonged, we are affecting one another and the surrounding world. So when you're really focused on the Om, you're sending it out to the whole world, everything and everybody. And when you're doing it the other way, and you're doing the Om, focusing on in you're doing it on yourself. But with a long M, almost the entire effect produced acts upon ourselves. And that's where people don't understand when you're chanting. Even in Buddhist temples, they do all these chantings. They have no idea what they're doing. Sometimes the third letter, A-U-M, are sounded separately. Again, it may be taken on many different notes of succession. That's why I say you can go high, you can go low, you can go sideways, you can go backwards, you can go cross-eyed, you can flip your ears around, you can turn your nose, you can wobble your nose all around, whatever. Your choice. Yeah, Mongolian throat singing. It's like in my language when we say certain words, we use this, we use this, we use this. There's three sounds we make to say a word. And when you listen to these old Buddhist monks, they use this, and they use this when they chant. You can hear three different sounds when they're doing it. And that's the real way to do it. When you understand this. But they don't teach you, do you? Who's your teacher? Are they really letting you know the truth? I don't follow Sadhguru. I've seen his stuff. I don't follow him at all. Just like I don't follow Osho. Again, it may be taken, and another one I don't follow is Mother Mary. She's an Indian that lives in Germany. I don't follow her either. Again, it may be taken on many different notes of succession in sorts of arpeggio, A-R-P-E-G-G-I-O. I have heard that according to the Indian books, there are supposed to be about 170 ways of pronouncing that word, each with its own different effects. And it is thought to be the most powerful of all mantras, just a simple word, Om. Yeah, everybody that's in power, they don't want to tell you what the truth is because they're powerful. Why do you think they don't want to give you the answers? Because once you become God in Jesus, they got no more power over you. Why are they going to teach you the truth? That's why you got to read. That's why you got to study. That's why you got to learn. You got to find the right teachers. This is where I can only teach through TikTok and Instagram to all of you out there in the world. I would love one day to be able to bring people together and teach and do all kinds of stuff. And I pray for this. I've been praying over 30 years for this to happen. This Hindu sacred word corresponds with the Egyptian Amen. Again, that's where I said in the church. And they stole Amen from the Egyptians and put it in the church. The word Eon is one derivative of it. So when you say Amen, sorry, you got to go back here. I jumped too far. So the Hindu sacred word corresponds to the Egyptian Amen. So Om and Amen. From that word also made the Eon or Aeon, A-I-O-N, of the Greeks, and the Avium in Latin, A-I-V-U-M. The word eon is one derivative of it. So this is what it's talking. The eons are long periods of time, and we're in time stages of eons. It has been said that Om is a word which represents the name of the Logos, the ineffable name, in our fifth root race, and that of the word used in a similar way in the fourth root race was Ta, T-A-U. And Ta goes way back to the land of Mu and all kinds of things, very ancient. Swami T. Sabaro once told us that these substitute words, which are given in each root race, are syllables of the great word, which will be complete in the seventh root race. And there's something when you understand how to sing and know these things. They don't want to teach you and make you understand. The special effects of this word, when properly sound at the beginning of meditation or in the meeting, is always like a call to attention. It arranges the particles of the subtle body in much the same way as electric current acts upon the atoms in a bar of iron. Before the passing of such current, the ultimate atom in the metal lies pointing in various directions. But when the bar is magnetized by the electric current, they all turn over and lean in one direction. Just so at the sound of the sacred word, very particular in the use response. We are then in the best condition to benefit by the meditation or study which is to follow. At the same time, it acts as a call to other beings, humans and non human, who at once together round, some with understandings of the meaning and the power of the word, others brought by the strangely attractive sound. This matter of sound is one that penetrates very deeply. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made. In the first place, the logos or word is the first emanation from the infinite. And what did he say? Let there be light. Everything is light. And sound made that. And with quite certainty is far more than a mere figure of speech. It represents the fact that although the emanations take place at a level where they could be anything such as we mean by sound, for there would be no air to convey it. Yet that which corresponds to and acts like sound is the power which is employed to create the universe. I do not know that we can hope to have any understandings of this plane, in this world down here, of what's meant by the creative word. He spake, and it was done. God said, let there be light. And there was light. This was the first expression of the deity. The eternal thought concealed in darkness comes forth as a creative word, perhaps because a great truth, words sung and spoken down, here evoked higher powers, the powers out of all proper or all proportions at to the level to which they themselves belong. I am sure that there is another. That's why I say search for the light. That's what you're really looking for. So the side of the whole question of sound, which our minds cannot reach at present, we can only faintly uh, adumbrate, adumbrate, adumbrate it. But at least we can see the power of the sound is a very great and wonderful thing. All mantras that depend on the power of sound are valuable only in the language in which they have been arranged. If we translate such a one into another language, we shall have another and quite different group of sounds. Broadly speaking, the good mantra, which is intended to harmonize the body and to produce beneficent, beneficent results, consists largely of long open vowels. To find this in our sacred word, and the same and true, the Amen of the Egyptians, which has been handed down to Christian churches. It is, by the way, the best sound of two notes. The church has its traditional way of taking it on two notes of semitone parts, usually F sharp and G. So if you're a musician, you understand this F sharp and G. Mantras which are used for evil purpose contain nearly always short vowels and consonants of a tearing and disruptive character, such as harim, Hrim. I won't say the other words. These uncouth exclamations are delivered with ferocious energy and spitefulness, which certainly make them terrible powerful for evil. Sometimes all the vowels in turn are inserted in these uh, cacophonous, cacophonous, cacophonous combinations of consonants, and their utterances include with some particular explosive curses, which it seems impossible to express in any ordinary system of letters. In Oriental countries, where they know something about these things, I fear that the mantra is often used by evil purposes. So Orientals know these curses and all kinds of stuff. And if they don't like you, they will use them. And that's bad medicine. That is so also among the Negroes. So in voodoo, they have lots of chants. I have come across a good deal of that in connection with voodoo or Obeah ceremonies, of which I saw something both in West Indies and South America, and I know that there is much hatred put into such spells and incantations, and this is where you can pay a sorcerer to do lots of harm. And people go to Central America, they go to Africa, and that pretending to go on holidays, and they pay people and they go other places in the world where you can find these people who are into black magic, and they pay them to do bad things to people, and then they come back and pretend you be your friend, and they bought a gift and they give it to you, and it was cursed to harm you sometimes. Our connection with mantras will be only those of a beneficent and kindly nature, and not with the maleficent, but good and ill alike have the same method of working. They are all intended to produce vibrations in the subtle body, either the reciter or those whom he aims the mantra. Sometimes they are intended to impose entirely new rates of oscillation. It strikes Western minds oddly that people should be recommended to recite a mantra 3,000 times. Our first feeling is, how can we find time? We say that time is money. The Orientals say that time is not. It is a difference in a point of view. The Oriental method of ideas are often unsuited to our Western lives, and nonetheless they have their value for those whom they are intended. Some have felt that the study of meditation prescribed for the members of the esoteric schools are heavily burdened for those who are unaccustomed to such exercises, but no Oriental would ever think of or think so. So the real difference between what you think, like even in Hinduism, even through Buddhism, all of it, there's lots of different thoughts. The Brahma particularly spent his life in the religious recitations of every act that he performs all through the day is always accompanied by some text or pious thought. So this is where they focus on one thought through the whole day, no matter what they're doing. We're real lazy in this country. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. It is a life lived absolutely in religion, or rather it is supposed to be such. In many cases, today it is the outer form only, or sort of shell, but men still recite the words even though they may not put the whole life and energy into them. They have plenty of time. They can well afford to repeat a phrase 108 times a day. The object of their doing so is perfectly clear. The Christ is said to have warned his disciples not to use vain repetitions when they prayed, as did the heathens. And from that text, the dedication has been made that all repetitions are useless. They assuredly would be so in an invocation addressed to a deity, for they would imply that he had not heard the first request. They would be or should be unnecessary for disciples. That's where people get into dogma and they wonder why it doesn't work. And then they get really mad. For the men who have already made some progress along the path of development to the formulations and intention clearly and to express it once strongly should surely be sufficient for them. But the ordinary man of the world has by no means reached this stage. It often needs a long course of steady hammering to impress the new vibration upon him. And so for him, repetitions are far from useless, and for they are deliberately intended to produce definite results. The constant impinging of these sounds and the various undulations which they set up upon the different vehicles does tend steadily to bring those vehicles into harmony, with a particular set of ideas. This tuning up of vibration is analogous to the work done by the Indian guru upon his pupil, which has already been mentioned in chapter 4. All the time, the waves radiating from his astral body are playing upon the astral body, the waves from the mental and causal body are playing upon theirs, and the result is that because his vibrations are by the hypothesis stronger than those of his pupil, he gradually brings them into closer and closer harmony with himself. With himself, if they are in any way capable of being so tuned. The constant recitation of mantras is intended to tune up the particular part of the mental or astral body at which it is aimed. There's no doubt at all that it can and does produce powerful results. The same methods are produced in Christian lands. One may often see Roman Catholics reciting Aves and Paternosters, so Aves and then capital Paternosters, many times over, generally just muttering them. And so they are little used to him except for the thought that they may suggest to him. The Indian mantras are also chanted, and chanted mantras does produce an effect. That is one reason why the older languages are better in respect than modern tongues. Modern languages are generally spoken quietly and abruptly, and only the Italian, Spanish, and Greek peasants seem to speak in the old way in long musical cadence, and that's where you sing it. Everything is a song. In the liberal Catholic Church, however, we especially recommend that its service shall always be in the language of that country, because we find that more often devotion is aroused in people if they understand clearly what is being said and can join intelligently in the ceremony. But there can be no question that Latin is more sonorous. Many mantras of this nature have no special meaning, are little more than a mere collection of vowels. In the Pistis Sophia, so that's that book I've been looking for a long time, and I'm going to find it. And it's the Greek Bible, I think, the Pistis Sophia, Pistis, capital Sophia, well known Gnostic treatise. There are a number of such meaningless mantras marked in a way that must have indicated chanting. Such rolling sonorous sounds as we find in the Indian mantras impose their rates of vibration gradually on the various bodies and so can be used to economize force. Anything whatever that we do by a mantra, we can do by our will without the mantra. But the mantra is like a piece of labor, saving machinery. It sets up the required vibration, doing part of the work for us and making it easier. In consequence, we may therefore regard it as a means for economizing force. So you're building an energy is what they're talking about when you're doing it over and over and over and over and over. Another point with regard to mantras, which is stressed in the Indian books, is the students are forbidden to use them in the presence or coarse or evil-minded people. So you can't do these kinds of things if there's really negative people around because they're sending negativity. And if you open up this, you can hurt lots of people. And this is why I say be really careful with things. Lots of bad people come to me to want to learn things. And I'm trying to be very, very careful what I teach people. I've tried in the past and people take that knowledge and have harmed me, harmed Cindy, and lots of other people doing this. If there were a person present who could not answer to the vibration of their higher form, he might well receive a lower octave, which would be quite likely to strengthen the evil in him. And there's lots of people who want to be gangsters and all kinds of stuff. And they're practicing things in very, very low ways. And they're making themselves inside more and more darker. We shall never use a mantra where there are people who are likely to be injured by it. Because you bring in this high energy, whatever they're wanting to believe or manifest or do, can destroy people or destroy them or destroy you. That's why you got to be really careful. And it says, do not give pearl to swine. And this is what it's talking about. Madame Blavatsky told us, I remember that the mantra might be recited not for oneself at all, but with a special view to someone who it was thought it might help. In this way, we might recite the sacred word or the Gayatri, Gayatri, or any of those beautiful Buddhist mantras which flow so sweetly, thinking strongly of a special person or projecting towards him the force of the mantra. But she advised us to use these things with care. Again, she gave a caution to no one should attempt to use the mantra which is too high for him. So don't try to do things you don't understand. None such will be given to us by our teachers, but I would say this as a caution to neophytes that if the reciting even the sacred words in any particular way should be produced, if you get headaches or feelings of nausea or faintness, it should be stopped at once. And people don't do this in yoga, and that they just keep pushing. I'm like, stop, quit it. Even people practicing qigong and that, they do this, and they make themselves really sick and they don't stop. We should go on working at the development of our character and try it again in a few months. In using the word, we are invoking great forces, and if we are not yet quite up to their level, they might not be harmonious, and the result may not be invariably good. And that's why I'm really careful what I do. In addition to the effect of vibrations and chant sounds, many of these mantras resemble a third type in having powers associated with them. For example, certain angels are connected with the Gayatri and the Terasaran, though they belong to a very different type. So the Gayatri and then the Tisarana is perhaps the greatest and most beautiful of all the ancient mantras. It has been chanted all over India for time immemorial, and the Deva kingdom has learnt to understand it and repose to it in very striking manner, a manner which is in itself most significant as showing that in an antiquity so remote to the very memory of it has been forgotten. The altruistic use of such mantras was fully comprehended and practiced. And you don't do this if you don't know what you're saying and doing. But people will go, oh, he said this, so I'm going to go and do it. Don't play with this stuff. Forgotten, the altruistic use of such mantras was fully comprehended and practiced. It begins always with the sacred word Om, because when you do that, you want to purify everything the right way before you do something. And with the enumeration of the planes upon which the action is desired, the three worlds in which man lives, the physical, astral, and mental, and each plane is mentioned. The devas belong to the plane, flock around the singer with joyous enthusiasm to do the work by which recitation of the mantra is about to give them. Students will remember that India Shiva is sometimes called Nilkanath, capital Nilakka. I'll do it over again. Capital Nilakantha, the blue-throated. So when you see Shiva sometimes painted in blue, the blue-throated. And there is a legend connected with that title. It is interesting to note that some of the angels who respond when you say the Gayatri is chanted bear the characteristics of the blue throat and are clearly first ray in their type. And the throat chakra is blue, right? Same with the third eye. There's two differences in blue. This wonderful mantra is the invocation to the sun. So when you're doing the mantra, you're singing to the sun because the sun is there. It gives life, right? Like when the natives do sun dancing, they're singing to the sun, they're praying. Of course, really to the solar logos, and that is the great central sun, the solar logos. And that's my prayer tonight. who stand behind the grandest of all symbols, the great shaft of light which immediately pours down upon and into the reciter, comes as thought from the physical sun, in whatever direction that sun may happen to be. The shift of light is white tinging with gold, is shot with electric blue, which is often seen in connection with any manifestations of the power of the first ray, which is your throat. But when it is filled the very soul of the reciter, it promptly shoots from him again into the 7 rays of cones having the colors of the spectrum. So it disperses through here and shoots into all your chakras as the 7 different colors if you're chanting and doing it right. And when it has filled the very soul of the reciter, it promptly shoots from him again in the 7 great rays of cones having the colors of the spectrum. So it shoots out of your chakras and it sends energy and light everywhere if you're doing it right. It shoots from him again in the 7 great rays of cones having the colors of the spectrum, as though the singer acts as a prism, yet the color rays which dart forth are of the shape, the reverse of what we usually find in such cases. Commonly, when we send out rays of spiritual force, they spring forth from a point of the body, the heart, the brain, or some other center. As they shoot out, they steadily broaden fanwise. So do those shining from a lighthouse, but those rays start from the base wider than the man himself. A basis, which is the circumference of his aura. So, how big is your aura? That energy goes out. And instead of widening out, they decrease to a point, just as do the rays of conventional star, except that they are the coarse cones of light instead of mere triangles. And that's where they made the Care Bears for kids, right? And the Care Bear would shoot energy from different points out, and little children would watch the Care Bears. And that's why sometimes I tell people, do the Care Bear stare. And they either open their heart or their third eye or their crown or whatever, and they send energy out in whatever they're doing. Another remarkable feature is that these 7 rays do not radiate in a circle in all directions, but only in a semicircle in the direction which the reciter is facing. Furthermore, these rays have a curious appearance of solidifying as they grow narrower until they end in a point of blinding light. And still more curious phenomena is that these points act as though they were living. If a man happens to come in a way of one of them, that point curves with incredible rapidity and touches his heart and his brain, causing them to glow momentarily in response. Each ray appears to be able to produce this result on an indefinite number of people in succession. And that's where I'm praying these energies go out. And I'm not the one that's doing it, and everybody is receiving something. In testing it on a closely packed crowd, we found that the ray apparently divided the crowd between them, each acting on the section that happened to be in front of it and not interfering with any other section. As this question of language of mantra, it seems to be of a minor importance. The repetition of the word in English having a clear intention behind them produce the full effects. The recitation of the same thing in Sanskrit, which the same intentions brought about the identical result, but in addition built around the radiating shaft a sound form resembling a wonderful intricate kind of carved wood framework. It provided us with something which might be imaged as a 7-fold gun through which the rays were shooting out. This sound form, extended only for a short distance, did not seem to make any difference in all the powers or sizes of the rays. Next, the literal rendering of this celebrated viscerals into English is Om. We adore and replenish glory in the Savitar, Savitri, our Lord. So, the name of the Lord. May He inspire our devotion and understanding, but in course of age it has come to imply to the devout Hindu very much more than is conveyed in the mere words. And this is where you have to find the true meaning when you pronounce something. You got to know what you're saying. A Sanskrit scholar tells me that while the ordinary word of the sun is Surya, Surya, this special title, Savitri, is used to imply the sun. That is to say, the solar logos. And that's where I say the central sun. The inspirer or the encourager. It seems to have a significance closely allied with the word paraclete. It is often by very unsatisfactory translations as comforter. And then there's a book called The Hidden Side of Christian Festivals. My friend also emphasizes the fact that this is not a prayer to the Logos to give us wisdom or devotion, but an expression of an earnest aspiration and resolve that his influence shall so act upon us to call out and to strengthen that which already exists within us. So when you're saying that Om, you're asking God to bring out things and bring these strengths to you, help you to become. The Buddhist Tisarana is chanted. The angels that come are those especially associated with the yellow robe. That's why the Buddhists wear that yellow robe. And they bring with them a wonderful peace and joyousness. That's why the Buddhas are always smiling and happy. And it's the angels that help them with that. For although they are so peaceful, they're amongst the most joyous in the world. When we speak of angels as appearing, we must remember all the dimensions of space. They have not come in a sense of starting from somewhere or far, from the far distance heaven, for example. I do not know where or shall I make that matter hopelessly puzzling if I put it to a greater force representing the Logos manifestation in those particular forms in answer to the invocations. They are always there, always ready, but they turn themselves outward to respond to the call. This is a whole history of a sort of prayers and its answers. We have only to think strongly of an idea, and that which ensouls it to represent, it will manifest itself to us. Any strong thought or devotion brings an instant response. The universe would be dead if it did not. It is in the natural law that the response must come. The appeal that reply are like the observer and the reserve of the coin. The answer is only the other side of the request, just as we say the karma that the effect the other side of the cause. There is a wonderful unity of nature, but people unfold themselves so thickly in their personalities that they do not know anything about it. People are even asleep to who they truly are. That's what it's trying to say. And you do all this stuff and you don't know what you're doing. It is only a question of opening yourself up. One can quite easily see that when we are able to yield ourselves to nature, we can particularly command nature. But because of the attitude we take, we can call forth its forces, and everything works with us. This is clearly explained in the light on the path. We must recognize the force of nature and open ourselves up to them. That's why I say talk to the Earth Mother and everything. Recognize them. That before was difficult becomes much easier. There is yet another section of the whole subject of mantras, as which I have myself have very little information. There is powers not only of sound, but of words as such, as numbers, and even of letters. And that's what the Jews, they have letters. And the letters and the numbers are very powerful when you know what you're doing. That's where Kabbalah comes in. And there's other kinds of ancient practices. And that's where numerology is powerful when you know what you're doing. We do not trouble about these things in modern days, but Sanskrit and also the Hebrew alphabet, every letter has its assigned value, not only of number, but also of power and color. I have no clairvoyants who see ordinary Roman letters as printed in books as each of a different color. A being always red, let us say B always blue, C yellow, D green, and so on. So the A is always red when they see it. And when they see a letter B, they see blue. When they see the letter C, they see yellow. When they see D, they see green, and so on. I have never had any such experience myself. I suppose my mind does not work in that way. And don't try to force this just because now you heard about it. People are like, oh yeah, I do this. I watch people in psychic fairs do that. They see somebody, and next thing they're running around saying they're able to do all of this, and they go and take a course and this and that. And I'm like, stop that silliness. They may perhaps be connected with astrological influences. I do not know. This aspect of things is also connected with mantras, and there is a school of mantras which give with each letter a numerical value quite independent of its position in the alphabet. They will tell you if they add up the values which they assign to the letters of a given word or sentence. And that's why when you use numerology with your names and everything, don't play with it if you don't know what you're doing. And so arrive at certain total. And if the sum total can be made by adding the letters of another word or group of words, the same mantric effects will be produced by two sentences. But about that I know nothing. The mantra is usually short, strong formula, and when for that purpose we want to produce a decided effect, that is the kind of form that our adjuration must take. If we wish to affect people profoundly and rapidly when speaking to them, we must use sentences which are short and strong, not long and rambling. They must follow the line of the military command or of the mantra. There must be a definite climax. Suppose we wish to help a person who is frightened. We may formulate within ourselves such a word as, I am strong, strong, strong. I am part of God. I am, and God is strength. So I am full of the strength. And the repetition of the idea will bring divine strength within us to the surface. We shall be able to inspire others with our courage. In this, as in other lines, knowledge is power. I always say that. When you really understand the truth, it's not bullshit. If we wish to work to the best advantage, we must understand, and if we wish to understand, we must study. The wise man knows how to live in peace and happiness because his life is in harmony with God's life, comprehending all, his sympathization with all, and has cast selfishness behind him forever. And he lives but to help and to bless. And then its requirements never change. And these are universal laws. They don't differ. You can't change them. You can't just say, oh, yeah, this. In considering the different systems described above, it must be imagined that their methods are mutually exclusive. Each plan contains something of nearly all the others. They are defined by that which dominates in each case, nor should it be supposed that any of them are strictly necessary. What is required is that which lies beneath all of them, the development of character, purification of life, devotion of service to strongly emphasize in at the feet of the master. That's where Jesus said, I will wash your feet. And all the masters are trying to help us. They're all washing our feet. They want us to become them. From this comparison of the different systems, it will be seen that the qualifications with the aspirant must develop pre- preparatory to the first great initiation are fundamental the same, however much they may appear to differ at first glance. Certainly for 25 centuries, and probably for a long time before that, this quite systematic procedure has been followed with regard to the evolution of those special persons who persist in struggling ahead. And although at certain times, and the present is one of them, circumstances are more favorable for initiation than any other. So right now, we can go into these higher places, but you gotta serve the light. Initiation than others, the requirements remain the same, and we must be careful not to fall into the erroneous thought that the qualifications have been in any way reduced. We thus find that these different lines are all bring us to the same point of initiation. And when you understand this, you realize you're not special. Even if you were to go beyond Jesus, you're going to realize you're not special.